Right, so there's kind of two ways to photograph. Here I'm propping up my sketchbook so that it is standing vertical, upright. And then I'm just gonna snap a photo with my cell phone camera. And when you're trying to do that, you want to align the frame with the edges of your sketchbook so that they are parallel. And then you go ahead and take a photo. And once you have your photo, I do recommend cropping out the edges. So you just go into edit and crop out. So I'm going to eliminate that spiral bound sketchbook there. So it's just the picture itself. Now you have to be careful that you don't crop any of your drawing because they want to see all of your drawing there. And that looks pretty good. So you just save it like that. All right, here's method 2. This is where you're looking directly down at your sketchbook. This can be great, but you do have to watch out that no shadow is cast from your cell phone onto your sketchbook. That'll happen if there's light from directly overhead. So if it's at nighttime and you try and do this, it won't work. You'll need to prop it instead. Last thing I want to see is a giant cast shadow of a cell phone crossing in front of your artwork. It's hard for me to tell the values and it's hard to look at your drawing. So again, once you have it, you take that picture. And here's what I recommend. I recommend that you have Google Classroom as an app on your phone. So I'm just going to show you how I'm doing this. So the classwork icon is located at the bottom of your screen when you're looking at it in the app on your phone. And then you want to go to drawing exercises. It should be the first assignment listed there. You're going to click on that assignment and it says something like your work. Once you click on your work, just like that, you add an attachment. So I'm using that kind of paperclip icon, or actually it looks like I'm picking using camera or picking a photo. So you can use your camera and take a picture directly in there, or I'm choosing to use one of my photographs. So I'm looking, you can either look at recent photos or all photos. I'm just going to click on that. And then I'm locating my picture of my drawing. And it's actually taking a while to upload. It was quicker on my laptop. I'm going to show you that too in a moment. That way you have at least 2 ways to upload a picture. So it should show up as that little red icon of a mountain. Then you turn it in, you submit it. Okay, so here is another method where you go onto Google Classroom. And this method is if you're going to not use your app on your phone. This is if you want to upload a picture from some other source. Maybe you have a digital camera. So here's what you would do. You would go same into drawing exercises, view assignment, and then you do add or create. So all I want you to do is to click that link. It's that little paperclip and then upload. I'm just grabbing and dragging a picture. I put a picture on my desktop and it should be uploading. See, so fast. And then you can turn it in, submit. And then if you click on your picture, you should be able to see your picture up close. And I submitted mine as a JPEG. Yours should work in any format, but JPEG will 100% work. Okay, so we are going to add some pretty basic shading. And if you've never shaded before, don't worry. I'm going to be teaching you in depth how to shade. And I'm going to show you a technique that works for me. So first of all, I think we mentioned today or the other day that it's best to go too light. better to go a little bit lighter than you think and have to double back and rework an area and darken it than to do the other way around, to go too dark and then to have to erase up. So I am using that kind of brown pencil, and that's just so everyone can see what I'm doing. You can quite easily get a very similar effect with a regular pencil. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I think wooden pencils work the best for shading, particularly if you have a strong grip on your pencil. You don't want to have a mechanical pencil that will snap off while you're shading. So one of the first things I want to bring to your attention is that I'm kind of curving my line a little bit around the form, and I'm also going one way with my stroke. Now, there are multiple ways you can shade. I'm not saying this is the only way because that's not the truth, but that's how I'm shading here. I'm going one way and I'm slightly curving my line to wrap around that cylinder shape. And again, best to go a little too light and have to rework than to go too dark and then having to erase. Your paper can never be the same as it was before you erased. It changes it a little bit. So I'm able to get multiple different values. Darkness to lightness is what values means, how dark, how light a color is. I'm able to do that through pressure. So my fingertips are very sensitive to pressure because I've trained and practiced. So you can do the same thing where you want to start out with a little bit of pressure. You should also notice where I'm holding my hand. I hold my hand pretty far back when I'm working on shading. You should try that too. A lot of people have been trained since elementary school to hold their pencil really close to the point. In fact, I've seen my son do it, and he's 8 years old. So you want to try actually doing something a little bit different and holding it a little bit farther back. You can actually see me reposition my hand to get a little bit farther back. And you actually want to involve your wrist a little bit more, get a little play in your wrist to let your wrist do some of the shading so you're not just in this death grip the whole time. So the shading motion is kind of a combination of doing a back and forth, and I do my shading really tight so that there are no gaps in between. What you don't want to see is air in between your strokes. You don't want to see paper in between them. You want it to be pretty tight. Where I get it to soften, so how I can make kind of the edge of the wrist turn, is by switching to just one stroke when I'm trying to get as light as I can. So what that means is instead of going back and forth, I just do one mark, lift, one mark, lift. And I follow it with a succession of those marks all the way down the wrist. So that's how I can get it to kind of fade. And that's something you can try too. So when I'm looking at the hand, I'm also trying to find the shadow shapes. So shadow shapes become way more visible when you blur or squint your eyes. So that's also something I do that's kind of bizarre, but a lot of artists do this too, where you kind of squint and get your object out of focus. You can actually more clearly see the values when you do that approach. So I'm comparing value areas to value areas, or shadow areas to other shadow areas. And I look at the cast shadow, that shadow that's falling underneath the fingertips, and I compare it to the shadow that's on the side of the palm there. Now I still want this hand to look geometric. I don't need it to be a real hand. That's our next assignment. So no pressure on that. And I am playing around with the direction of my stroke. So I'm kind of going in these long vertical marks for the fingers. But you do have to try and get those fingers to look like a cylinder. I haven't taught you how to do this yet. This is a good kind of assessment to see where some of you are at. And if you don't have any shading experience, don't worry. All I'm asking for is a try. And again, like comparing shadow areas to other shadow areas. That includes the midtones. So when we're talking about shading and light, there's areas that are in shadow, and then there are areas that fall right in the middle range, which are called midtones. And then there are the highlights. Highlights are the lightest, brightest area on an object. Even a dark object can have a highlight, so you have to be cognizant of that when you're working. So I'm not necessarily looking for an exact replica. I'm just looking for a hand that has some 3D qualities, some shading on it. It'd be great if you could do some cast shadows, midtones, highlights on there. All right, so I wanted to show you some master hands. This one here should look kind of familiar. I know it got a little bit cropped, but that is Michelangelo's hand, and that is that scene of Adam and Eve. So hands can be in a variety of poses. This happens to be a woman's hand as she's resting it on what looks like a bed or some cushions. And I just love the relaxed quality of the fingers. It's just very expressive. This is by John Singer Sargent. He happens to be one of my personal favorite figurative painters, meaning he draws people. But you can see that posture, it's just so normal and relaxed, typical of how we see a hand next to someone's side. These hands are by Leonardo da Vinci, and they use crosshatch and, well, mainly hatching and cross-hatching and lines that wrap around the form, which is called contour lines. This next picture shows interlocking hands, so they're kind of interwoven a little bit, and I think it's just beautifully painted. You can see all the veins. I'm hoping this one is familiar. It's a famous piece by M.C. Escher. He was really good at draftsmanship and shading with pencil. It's just such a cool piece to watch these hands pop out of the paper. Another Da Vinci sketch, and you can kind of see he's using that hatch mark again, the contour lines. He's also using a white pencil that's on toned paper, and I just like how the hands, one hand's kind of cradling the other. And then there's this beautiful hand. It's not quite finished, but this is a painting, looks like a study of a hand. Like with the other hands, this hand looks very natural. So you have an option of either finding a photograph of a hand, copying a master artwork of hands, or using your own offhand as a model for next lesson.